Baxolile, we've seen technology being used and encompassed a lot in the private sector, but some may argue that in government, and especially local government, we're still lagging behind. Where would you see the opportunities in, for example, local government to implement ICT solutions?
Well, I think the first thing to appreciate about local government is that it certainly seems to be a lot more complex than what you'd find in the private sector. When you deal with private sector entities, you're dealing with one entity with all the sort of influence and stakeholders within that one entity. And of course, we know that in government, especially local government, you're dealing with multiple agencies, you're dealing with different spheres of government. So certainly the context is one that we should first and foremost appreciate about local government. Then I think a lot has been said about technologies in local government, concepts such as smart cities, smart metering, broadband, etc., etc. But I think the difficulty that we have at a practical level is how do we enable our local governments to move in a practical way from where they are towards this vision of digitization with all these disruptive technologies that we actually hear about. I mean, let me give you an example.
Sure.
We often talk about the fact that in the future in local government, we should be able to provide and consume services as citizens using our cell phones. But we never really talk about the fact that starting with a basic service such as SMS can make a huge difference to citizens. For example, there's a big difference between standing in a home affairs queue for 2 hours, okay, and not getting any information, to actually receiving an SMS saying, your application has been processed, this is the right time to actually come and, collect your documentation. So I think really what we have to appreciate is how do we help local government practically move from where they are towards this bright future of technology-enabled services.
Critical to ICT solutions is people, whether it's in government or in private enterprises. How do we make sure that the right people are equipped and understand the strategic importance of ICT?
Well, I think when we talk about people and empowering of people, I think there's the stakeholders within government, which are the officials that are really responsible for providing services to citizens. But I think the more critical and important stakeholders we always have to take into account is the citizen themselves. Unfortunately, technology industry has a very bad history in how they provide technology solutions at local government without taking into account the citizen themselves. The good news about the citizens nowadays is that citizens are tech savvy. So nowadays you don't need to train people how to use an app. You don't need to train people how to actually go online and consume services. And that's really a strong position, and we should be using and leveraging that massive opportunity to further educate how people can use existing platforms that they are used to today to actually move and consume government services.
How has Dimension Data been involved in local government in providing solutions?
Well, we are involved with municipalities across the country. We are certainly involved with the major metros in Joburg, in the Western Cape, in KZN, and also in the Eastern Cape. And we've been involved at multiple levels. We've been involved with helping municipalities really become more efficient and productive within their own internal IT systems, from the network right up to the actual application. And what we're trying to do is to really help these municipalities deliver services to their citizens a lot more quickly. Then on the other hand, we've also been involved with, some cutting-edge technologies. We've certainly been involved with things like broadband and how broadband can be used to better enable new types of services, whether it be in education or in healthcare. So specifically, for example, we've been involved with an exciting project in the healthcare sector where we've enabled the emergency services to use technology to better communicate so that, the right ambulance arrives at the right location with the right information to actually deliver the service.
And if we look towards the future, you spoke about smart cities. What's the ideal of a smart city that we'd like to use incorporating ICT solutions?
Well, in my view, I mean, there's no sort of universal end state for smart cities. I think it all depends on the actual context. You know, cities and municipalities themselves are very much like people. They have their own character, they have their own vision. And for me, smart city is really making sure that we align to the vision of the city and the citizens. You know, so for example, the smart city in Cape Town might be fundamentally different to a smart city in Johannesburg. A smart city of a municipality and a city that wants to be, you know, a tourist destination will be fundamentally different to a smart city that wants to be an economic hub, for example. And for me, this is where the real practical issues, you know, need to come in. So we should be very cautious in trying to, you know, come up with the definition of what a smart city is. At the end of the day, it's about how do we practically align with the vision of the municipalities and the cities and put in place practical steps using technology to actually work towards that.
On that point of localizing the solution and making it specific, has Dimension Data moved onto the broader continent from a local government solution?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, we are in about 16 countries outside of South Africa, just in this region alone in Middle East and Africa. But specifically on the African continent, you know, if we look at Nigeria, there's a lot of work that we are doing with the Lagos state, for example, which is one of our key clients in the Nigerian region. And what we're doing there is, you know, also trying to introduce platforms to help that state become more efficient. And of course, one would appreciate that the numbers that we are dealing with in Nigeria are fundamentally different from what we are used to here in South Africa.
Of course.
You know, for example, you know, the number of citizens that you find in Lagos alone as a state is probably close to the number of citizens in the entire country in South Africa. So what we're doing there is really working with the government to be able to really scale up the services and the efficiency using cloud platforms to actually, you know, provide services to their citizens.
Baxolile, thank you so much for your time and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.